Welcome everyone. In today's video, we will explore how you can transform clinical quality language or CQL artifacts into actionable clinical decision support at point of care using CDS hooks. If you're not familiar with CQL, it is a specification designed to express clinical logic into standard shareable format. In the US, CQL has been used to define quality measures for a while. However, widespread adoption of CQL in daily workflows has not really happened. We think there's an opportunity to change that with CDS hooks. CDS hooks is a standard that is used to integrate clinical decision support at point of care. We recently did a video talking about CDS hooks and how you can integrate it with your clinical workflows, irrespective of what EHR you're using, even if your EHR doesn't support CDS hooks. Everything that we will be talking today also applies to that video. If you have not seen that video, we definitely recommend you to check it out. We'll put a link to that description below. For the demo today, I have divided the demo into three main steps. We are going to first go and look at CQL as a query language. There is a reason why some people get confused that it is clinical query language. We are going to use an open source tool from Google to see how we can use that language to query healthcare data. We are then going to use an open source tool provided by AHRQ to create a CQL artifact from scratch. We are going to then take that particular artifact and convert it into a CDS hook and see how we can use it in a clinical workflow at point of care. I'm going to use a very simple example of creating a risk factor based on an HbA1c value in a diabetic management scenario. The example is really simple, but you will be able to see how the assets and the artifacts and other things that we develop from here can be applied to any complicated workflow. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I am on the GitHub repository of Google CQL. And as you can see, they have defined it here as an experimental clinical quality language execution engine. The reason I really like this repository is because they have a very cool tool in here called Web Playground. And what this tool allows you to do is to basically go and run raw CQL commands just like you would do against a database. So what I've done is I've already deployed this library and I have it running in my browser in here. And you can see there that it has a data tab where I can provide it some data. In this case, it's a Fire bundle that it can use. And then this is just like a query window where I can go and run CQL commands. In this case, what we call them as expressions. So you can see I have defined like some expressions in here where I'm reading a name, which is basically patient name based on the Fire path. I can actually define expressions that use other expressions. And then I can define pretty complicated expressions like has hypertension, which will go and look through all the observations and then find a particular observation and then find the value and compare it with a particular range that we have given it. I can write any of these queries like this and then run the command, and it will actually give me the responses according to the data that I have provided. So it provides me a very good interface to keep changing the data and try different combinations. Now, you would not typically need to write CQL from scratch like this, because there are many tools available out there to create CQL. And we're going to look at one of them right now from AHRQ. I am on the AHRQ website at cds.arq.gov/CDS Connect. And what we will be looking into is the authoring tool here. You do need an account to access this feature. Signing up is free, so go ahead and do it. I am already logged in, so I'm going to go straight into that particular section. And what we are going to do is we are going to be actually building a new artifact. This is going to be the CQL library that we will be building. So I'm going to click on the create new artifact button, and I'm just going to give it a name that we are going to be building, and I'm just going to call it diabetes alerts. I do want to say one thing as we start on this tool is that this tool has a lot of features for building real world libraries and risk management and a lot of other things. I'm not going to be going into the details of that. There are many videos published by AHRQ around it. Definitely go check it out. We are only going to explore some of the key features of how to build CQL libraries using this tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And the way this tool works basically is that it provides you a very good user interface for creating expressions that we saw in the previous tool. So we don't have to write SQL manually. It will basically write that SQL for us. So I'm going to start from the inclusions tab. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building those expressions. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to go and say that I want to build my first expression based on a condition, because we will be working on diabetes patients. So I can basically define that expression based on a value set or a code. I'm going to choose value set. I'm going to type diabetes in here and click on the search button. It's going to come back with some options for me. I can go through all the different options and click on any one of them to see the code that are available in that particular value set. In this case, I know that I want the IC10 value set, so I'm just going to go click on it. Now, what you're seeing in here is it's basically giving me a warning in here telling me that, okay, you have picked a set of conditions, but I really don't know how to evaluate it. So the way we fix that is by adding modifiers to it. So I'm going to click on modifier. And what I'm going to say in here is that I want to find a situation, or I want to define my expression where the condition is active and that condition exists in that particular patient record. So I'm going to click on add, and you can see that it has created a very nice definition for me here that there exists an active condition with a code from this particular value set. So that is basically my first expression created. Now I can go ahead and add more expressions to it, like for age, for demographics, for all the other ones. We are not going to do that here. I'm actually going to show you a different way to do it. I'm going to go into the base elements in here, and I'm going to build an expression to check for the HbA1c observation. So I'm going to basically go in here and click on observation. In this case, I'm actually going to add a code. I'm going to copy the code that I know is for HbA1c in the Loink system. I can validate that. So I'm going to pick up that particular code. And what I'm going to do is this time is I don't need to add any modifiers or anything, because I'm just defining a base element that I will be using in other expressions. So I can pretty much leave it in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into subpopulations. So what we are going to do here is we are actually going to define two different types of alerts. We are going to say that if the value is between 7 and 8, we want to create a risk alert. And if the value is greater than 8, we are going to create a high risk alert. So I'm going to start by defining a subpopulation, and I'm going to give it a name is in risk population. And what I'm going to define that is that I'm going to actually take the base element that we defined in there. So we're going to pick up that particular element, and we are going to add a modifier this time to compare the values. So the way we do that is I'm going to click on modifiers. I'm going to say that first of all, I want to look at the most recent value, and then I want to look at the quantity of that, and I want to do a value comparison. Our value comparison will be that it is greater than 7, it is less than or equal to 8, and the unit there will be percent. So this will define our first population. And again, you can see it in here. There exists the most recent observation with a code from this whose value is greater than 7 and is less than equal to 8%. So I'm going to go ahead and add that particular observation in there. And then I'm going to add a second subpopulation in here, which we are going to call as is in high risk population. So let me paste that name in there. And then I'm going to pick up the same base element, and I'm going to just build that here quickly. Okay, so I basically have just built it to say that this is anything greater than 8. I'm going to click on the add button. And you can again see that it is giving me an error here. The error here is because I did not add the unit button. So that should fix it. So now what we have is we have basically defined two populations. One is an in risk population, which is basically the HbA1c between 7 and 8. And then there is in high risk population, which is an HbA1c greater than 8. And again, this is a very simple scenario. You can build pretty complicated scenarios of multiple expressions and other things and combine them together. But we're just trying to understand how the basics work. So the last step of here, what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to go under recommendations, and we are going to add what we want to recommend or what we want to create as alerts when these particular conditions are met or when a patient is found in meeting one of those population criteria. So I'm going to add my first recommendation, and I'm going to say that this particular recommendation is going to be for is in risk population. And I'm just going to put it a little text in here. For now, we are just going to do your basic text that the patient's HbA1c level is above the target but below the critical threshold. Consider reviewing the patient's diabetic management plan. And then I can add a second recommendation, and I will say that particular recommendation is for the second high population, and I'm going to put a second text in there to, for that particular alert. That pretty much creates the basic set for me. What I can do now is I can actually click on this View CQL button, and it will generate that entire CQL for me based on everything that I had selected. So this gives you a really easy way to create the base CQL. You can still go ahead and edit it, try it, and kind of understand it. But you can see that using the UI tool, we have created similar CQL that you saw before, which is a pretty advanced scenario as compared to just getting the patient names and gender. I think I'm pretty happy with it for now, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. Now I do see a couple of red icons in here. Let's just see what is that basically saying. Okay, so yeah, I need to have different names in there. So let me just say HbA1c in risk. I'll just give them different name, and then it's probably telling me the other one is in high risk. Okay, so that should make the tool happy. Yep, everything is okay. And what I want to do as the last step from here is I'm going to actually go ahead and download this CQL library. So let me just go ahead and click on download, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. So I'm going to go open that particular library in a separate window. So you can see these are the files that were generated from the tool. What it gives me is a couple of CQL files, but what it also gives me and what we will be using in our next step is these JSON files, which are also the ELM files, the ELM files. And this is where it converts the CQL logic into logic that can be processed by SQL execution engines. We will be looking that in a minute. I did want to go back to the tool for one more step to just show you. The tool also provides a very good way to test your CQL libraries. So let's just take a look at that too. What I can do is I can just go to this testing tool, and I already have a couple of patients preloaded in there. So I can actually click on one of the patients and just see what data the patient has in there. So you can see that this particular patient has some conditions, some medications, and they have an HbA1c of 9.2. And the other patient that I have in here has an observation of HbA1c of 7.5. So what I can do is I can basically select both of those patients and say that I want to run my CQL library that I just created on these two patients. This is good to validate it against the logic, and it will be also good to validate when we use it in our actual CDS hooks alerts. What you will see in here is that it actually gives me a very detailed breakdown of that Jane Smith actually got a critically high alert. This was the 9.2 value, and this one actually gives me the other recommendation. And I can even go in there and including like each of these lines, it tells me what met where. So very easily giving you the ability to see how the engine is actually executing the logic. Pretty cool tool in my opinion. Okay, so with that, we have the files. We have tested our logic against a set of patients. We are ready to go back to now MeldRx and use this particular CQL to convert it into a CDS hooks. Okay, so before I go and convert the CQL library that we created into a CDS hook, I wanted to just give some context here. There are two different scenarios that can happen there. The library could have been developed by a healthcare organization for usage internally, or it could be a library that is developed by an app developer and then it is made available to different organizations for usage in their organization. We covered the second scenario a lot in our previous two videos, and that's the scenario we're going to work around in here. So the idea there is that app developers or library developers can develop these and make them or publish them into a central repository, and then EHR users can basically add them to their EHR instance and use them as part of their workflow at the point of care using CDS hooks. So I'm going to go first use as a developer and see how we are going to take those CQL files and convert them into CDS hook. And then we are going to basically go in there as an EHR user and configure to use those hooks as part of our daily workflow. Again, if this is confusing to you, highly recommend to check out our previous videos where we covered this in a lot more detail. Also, please feel free to reach out to us if you want to have any more details or discuss. So let's jump back in. Okay, so I am in the MeldRx app logged in as a developer, and I'm going to go ahead and register a new app. I'm going to give it the same name as my library, and what I'm going to be building is a CDS hooks app. So in the previous video, we had shown how you can use this to develop already deployed CDS hooks library. So in that case, you needed to give it a URL where the CDS hook service was deployed. In today's video, we are actually building the CDS hooks from a CQL library. So for that, what we're going to do is we are going to actually choose this option, and then I'm going to go and browse to those files that we had downloaded from the AHRQ tool. So I'm just going to select all the JSON files from it. And what you will see is after I have uploaded the file, the tool will actually go and analyze the files, and it has a mini engine kind of built in there where it will tell me some of the details what are in those files. So there's a couple of things that we are displaying here. First of all, you can actually see that it has detected all the different kind of expressions that are available in those files. Now we are obviously only interested in these two that we want to display in our CDS hooks cards. You will also be using the recommendation, but you can see all the other expressions that we had created are also available for usage in different kind of scenarios. What I'm going to basically do is I'm just going to give it a name in here. So I'll just call it a diabetes alerts again in here. We'll just type some description. We'll leave it there for now. And then the key part here is how are we going to convert those expressions into cards here, which will be then available to us when we are actually in the patient chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this add new card button in here, and it is going to ask me some different properties to fill in. And the first one is what is the most important one. It is asking me is like, what is the condition under which a card should be displayed? So I'm going to first say is that I want that card to be displayed if the patient is in risk population, which was again the 7 to 8 value. And I'm going to just say that the recommendation is just the recommendation. So the CQL engine will automatically know that the recommendation that needs to show in here is which is basically for the is in risk population. I'm going to say that this is actually a warning, not a critical alert. And then I can just give it a summary in here. For this case, we'll just keep it very simple and we'll just call it diabetes risk alert. Okay. So, and if I can just type it properly, so we'll put it there, and I'm going to just go ahead and save it. And then I'm going to add a second card, which I'm going to basically put it for the high risk alert population. So I'm going to say is in high risk population, and I'm going to say the recommendation is still the same recommendation because the library will take care of showing the right recommendation. In this case, I want to show a critical card, and I'm just going to say it in here is that this is a high risk alert Just to keep it consistent, we're just going to give it the same name, but just call it a high risk alert and save it. So what we have basically done now is that we have configured a CQL library and we are going to convert it into a CDS hook service that can be accessed from within MeldRx. I'm going to go ahead and click on register app in here, which is going to basically go and register the app. This does take about a minute or so to get published. So I'm just going to wait for a minute and then come right back. Okay, so the app is published now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my apps list and I'm going to do one last step in here, which is basically to make this app available to all the EHR users. So for that, I'm going to go to the published tab. And again, this is something we have covered a lot in our previous videos. I'm just going to make that status enabled. Let me go fill up some details in here really quickly. Okay, so I have completed some of the details. Now, in this case, I can actually go ahead and state that this is an evidence-based DSI and complete all the sections to make this app actually eligible if you are looking for a B11 criteria. I'm not going to do that right now because we're just focusing on the conversion of CQL to CDS. I'm just going to leave it there and go ahead and click save. So with that, my app is published now and it is available for EHR users to use it as part of their clinical workflow. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my context from a developer to an organization which is logged in, and I'm going to go into the EHR apps and I'm going to add that particular app to my EHR context. So I'm going to just search the app store in here, and that is the app that we just deployed. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to go ahead and add that app to my instance. Now we are ready to see the last step, which is basically seeing the CDS hooks in action based on that CQL library. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my patients tab and I'm going to go select John Doe to open the patient chart. And what you will see is as it opens, it's actually going to detect that John Doe has a value of HbA1c that is above the target, and it is going to show me that particular recommendation in here as an alert. If I go back and I open Jane Smith's chart, which had a high risk alert, it's actually going to show me that high risk alert in there. So again, this is a very simple example of how we took an existing CQL library and converted it into a CDS hook flow. You can see how this can be applied to various different evidence-based care scenarios. Just to show that, again, there is a lot of options that are available with CDS hooks. I'm just going to go back and add some of the other apps that we covered in our other demos. So I'm just going to add one of our demo card service so that you can actually go and see what are the different ways a card can be rendered. So now you can see that there are different ways where you can build actions and other things into the card. So it's not just displaying an alert, it can actually do things of updating patients' data, basically creating different kinds of alerts or different kind of options for those cards. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of the power of combining CQL libraries with CDS hooks. We are currently working with various EHR trying to bring this to clinicians at point of care. If you are interested in bringing CQL to your organization or using CDS hooks, we would love to have that discussion with you. Please contact us or let us know how we can help. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, cheers.